well as I can. Before I start, let me start by paying tribute to my wife for whatever I have achieved in my professional life or personal life. I am greatly indebted to my wife, Mrs. Roshana Islam. It is often said that behind every man there is a woman. In my case, it's particularly true. As I changed jobs continuously over the years and working in different countries with different cultures and languages ranging from Urdu to Italian, the overwhelming brunt of adjustment fell on my wife. With her fortitude, patience, and wisdom, she navigated through this period. Also, she brought my 2 children up while I was sheltered in a cocoon, which is inhabited by globalized professionals like my friend Keith Griffin. I lived in a world while she was carrying the burden of bringing up my children. In addition, she held the anchor of my family boat steady while I recklessly let it loose on stormy and uncertain waters. So I thank you again for all the help you have given me. Now, when Munir Quddus asked me what shall I speak on this occasion, I told him at this stage of my life, I have no economic wisdom to give. I have stories to tell. I belong to an age when many of you were not born, some of you were born but were not quite able to understand what is going on. So I'll give you some stories of prehistoric times, starting in mid-50s until now. And I had, unlike many of you, as you have heard from my friends, had a very peculiar change of careers. Very few of you have so diversified career experience as I had. Teacher, researcher, planning commission, international civil servant, and again researcher. So it's a very peculiar life, so I'll tell you some of the stories of this rather peculiar life. When I started teaching in mid-50s on my return from abroad, as some of you have mentioned, I found a department which was critically short of senior, well-trained teachers, and a syllabus which belonged to prehistoric times. Even my time, it belonged to pre-47. So first start I had to struggle how to bring the syllabus of teaching in economics department up to date. And until 1957 late, though no returnees with training from abroad came back, Rahman Subhan joined end of 57. In those 2 years, you'll be surprised to hear, I used to teach about 4 hours a day in postgraduate classes, honors classes. It's like primary school. Continuous teaching all day, for all the week, all the days. It was a heavy, very heavy teaching load. Now, for many of you, it will appear very strange. How is it possible? But that had to be done. There was no choice. And then, second question is, fortunately, my senior colleagues who were not very well trained, they left me alone to do all the revolutionary changes without any protest. That was a luck. They didn't protest when I was doing all these changes. And then about research. I thought, friends, since I have come back from abroad, settled in Bangladesh, leaving all the possible assignments abroad, I could only, even though I was specialized in macroeconomics and trade, there was the possibility of doing that kind of research in Bangladesh. So I decided to do empirical research on Pakistan economy, in those days, Pakistan, Bangladesh. And what did I do will be very strange these days. Bangladesh, or East Pakistan at that time, was overwhelmingly rural, even now. So I decided to learn about the rural economy of Bangladesh by actually doing what you would think horrifying. I did interviews in the villages. This man trained abroad, doing theoretical research, he comes back and goes around the villages, interviewing farmers and traders. And today is no time. I learned some of the fundamental truths in economics from jute farmers. You wouldn't believe it. And in my autobiography, I've written, it's called Decision Making Under Uncertainty. Economists will understand this. And they taught me what that does mean, decision making under uncertainty, jute farmers. Then we did a lot of surveys, and most of them two of them I actually did interviews. And the subjects were very strange. One was rural credit, rural unemployment, jute marketing and farm production. And the last one was development potentials of East Pakistan. Now, who financed all this? Unfortunately, no donors, no international agencies, no Ford Foundation, no Rockefeller Foundation, no Mike Michelson Institute, nobody was there. So how do you do this? Well, surprisingly, for the government, that would be a good lesson, we approached the State Bank of Pakistan. Here is a Bangladeshi economist. By that time, I was not still marked as an enemy. And they financed 3 of these researchers. Of course, we had no honorarium, nothing, it's field expenses. And then the fourth one was financed by the Department of Finance of East Pakistan government, which was headed by an Englishman who became a Bangladeshi, David Khalid Pawar. He converted to Islam, married a Bangladeshi woman. He was the Additional Secretary of Development. He was my gate patron. Later on, we worked together in various finance commissions. So that's the way we financed research in those days, and that's the period we established Bangladesh Bureau of Dhaka University Bureau of Economic Research. A small room, 2 typewriters, 1 clerk, that's what the university gave us. These days it would be outrageous, no? Impossible situation. We are out of our mind to do this kind of thing, but we did it. And then about 3 years later, I decided I'm getting a little out of date with the developments in economics, working in Dhaka in this kind of environment. I wanted to refurbish myself. But then before I went, I started thinking, well, I do not know enough linear and matrix algebra. What do I do about it? So I asked a colleague of mine, Department of Statistics and Mathematics, to teach me matrix algebra. He is this great professor learning matrix algebra for a colleague of mine, young colleague. He's just passed his MA. Then I said, well, I will have to go abroad. I will just forget. I wouldn't get all the refreshment. So I got a Nuffield Foundation fellowship went to first UK and then to Netherlands. UK first to London School of Economics, then Cambridge University, then Netherlands Economic Institute. First thing I did was to start learning again more of matrix algebra. Those days were economists to remember the linear programming was the rage of the time. I didn't know enough of it. So I started learning it while at London School of Economics. And there I found another thing for most teachers will remember, will notice how strange things were happening in those days. There was a senior faculty seminar run by the director of the School of Economics, Lionel Robbins, the famous economist. So what was the procedure there? Every fortnight or every month, a senior professor will read the latest publication, he will summarize the findings, and 2 others will comment, and all the others will participate. It was the surest way of keeping abreast of the latest development month by month. I've never seen like this anywhere else. It's a fantastic seminar. I was there for 6 months, attended every fortnight. Then I went to Cambridge. There I learned the national income account. The father of national income account, Richard Stone, was at that time invented. I worked with him for about a few months. Then I went to Netherlands, where this Jan Tinbergen, he was not Nobel laureate at that time, but he was the first. He established the Holland-Dutch Central Planning Bureau. Planning was not, in non-communist countries, it was not known, but he established the Planning Bureau in Holland. He was the professor, but he was in charge of it. So he had an institute called Economic Institute in Netherlands. So I visited here for about 4 months. And there I am, again, this is too technical, but forgive me if I use one word. These days we need instruments for achieving targets. For example, if you want to kill two birds with one stone or one bird with two stones. He taught us, didn't teach us, I was not a student, I was visiting there. The number of instruments, the number of targets must not exceed number of instruments. I don't know the technical discussion, but it was a very interesting learning, and that's what I wrote my first book on econometric short-term model for Pakistan economy. So that was the teaching. I went back. In the meanwhile, I started serving, as Rahman Subhan has mentioned, in various commissions of the government of Pakistan for a strange reason, by that time still not marked as a saboteur or as a conspirator. So in those commissions I learned one thing, which gave me later on was helpful. How do you analyze a budget? The procedures of making a budget, administrative procedures, not economics. And how do you allocate resources, provinces and states between local governments and central governments? Those administrative problems I first got handled there in these commissions. In the company of the top finance secretaries and financial giants of Pakistan government, I was the poor youngest man in the commission. When I was associate professor at Dhaka University, I was 26 years old. I just went back to pro. In these commissions, I was about 29, 30 years old. And these fellows who were member commissions were 60, 50 years old. But they tolerate this young fellow, sort of a contrarian fellow, is all right. Then, after some years, 10 years I taught at Dhaka University, but I am not boring you with all the issues. I'm trying to, suggestions of some of my friends to write a memoir, in which I will wash some dirty linens of myself and others, but I'm trying to do that, not as yet complete. How was I appointed to PIDE? That's another story. Pakistan stronghold, why this Bangladesh economist should be appointed there? For those of you who know Pakistan very well, I don't know. I lived with them for 8 years, and I'm the greatest expert among the professional economists in Pakistan. I claim that proudly. I lived with them for 8 years. Why did the appointment? Because nobody from Pakistan will join a research organization. No gentleman of honor, highly educated Pakistani, does research around 3 years. They run the country, they run the planning commissions, state banks, central banks. They don't do research. So they had no choice but to appoint this fellow from Bangladesh. Now, this is absolutely true. I can go into detail, but that's not time for it. And then I exploited my monopoly position very well. Ford Foundation was assisting planning commission and at the same time PIDE. They insisted, after having run themselves for about 4 years, after 6 years, that it has to be nationalized. And they couldn't get a Pakistani, so only Bangladeshi. But I put a condition. Now this tremendous bargaining power. Ford Foundation withdraw support if they have under the nationality. And they cannot find anybody else except me. Not because of my qualifications, because of my ability. So what do? I said, I have conditions. Gus Rennies from Yale University to negotiate with me. I said, first condition, you must make the university agree I should be able to come at any time I want. Second, you must make the board of the Pakistan Institute agree that any time I download, I will resign and come back. Third, there will be no interference in the research program. Fourth, in the appointment of foreign advisors, I will have completely free hand. If they do not agree, I don't go. So Ford Foundation, and the area of the hard bargain with the Pakistani government, they agree. Why? This period of an organism, so what? It's a small price to pay to make the foreign advisors. So they paid the small price, all right. Not realizing small price will become a very serious problem for later on. So I went to Pakistan Institute. For the first time, I had no shortage of resources to do research. It was financed by the government of Pakistan and Ford Foundation liberally. Ford Foundation gave enough money for inviting distinguished economists like Kate Griffin, enough money to send students abroad for training from the institute and from outside the institute. I had a research program for training economists from University of Eastern West Pakistan. Large number of economists, Pakistanis and Bangladesh were trained under this program when I was generously by the Fourth Foundation. Very famous. And then equipment, library, etc. was available. The Economic Czars of Pakistan. Deputy Chairman of Planning Commission was my chairman. Finance Secretary was a member. These are all powerful Ayubs, powerful lieutenants. They were all in the board. And this young fellow from Bangladesh runs his organization, and he is, of course, says whatever he likes. They hate it to the bottom of the, but then keep quiet. Small price, the fellow is all right. Now the next crisis was, as Keith referred, the kind of research that I encouraged, apart from myself. I did research, the field I liked. I went back to my original field, trade, aid, macroeconomics. And then the rest did research according to the best. And I encouraged some subversive research. One, for the first time, East and West Pakistan income was estimated by a researcher. And I was careful enough not to get it done by indigenous. I invited Norwegian economist, Asbjørn Bargen. He estimated it so that a Norwegian, not an American, not an European, poor, uninvolved country, Norwegian. So he came and worked and first time published East-West Pakistan separate income. For the first time officially, researcher published. And it made Pakistan government extremely unhappy. But they couldn't do anything. Because any challenge I will leave and there will be crisis for it. So eighth conditionality in my experience for the first time worked very well. I used the eighth conditionality to stop the Pakistanis from interfering. It was very well done. Every time anything happened, I will call up Yale University. I say, what is this? I'm leaving. They will fly in. What's going on here? So I was protected by the eighth conditionality. That was not bad at all. Now, but they were very unhappy, all these separate estimates of income, industrialization, etc., etc. Then, but at that period, one thing I must say, I had the best period of my life academically. Not only I had these foreign advisors working with me about every time 4 or 5 of them, some short term, some long term, and Planning Commission in Karachi had a large contingent of foreign advisors run by Harvard University. Ours was Yale University, theirs was Harvard University. So we had a very large contingent of professional economists in Karachi to interact. The first time you had a large group, peer group to interact. For me, it was a fantastic opportunity, which I never had in Dhaka. Also, unlimited money, I could go around the world anytime, that was a condition also, no interference. I could go to various conferences, visit research centers, no question asked. I would just let Yale University know and chairman of the board know I'm leaving, that's all. But it's no control, no approval, nothing, just information. It's unbelievable, unbelievable. All right, next point. How come Pakistan stalwarts, the economic czars, tolerated my subversive activity? Which was obvious. 2 reasons. One, use of the eighth conditionality. More importantly, they thought these scholarly letters nobody reads. So what difference does it make? This Nurul Islam and come write these articles. Who reads them? So we are not threatened. The powers that we were not threatened, nobody reads them in the first place. And thirdly, even if that completely secure in power, that any subversive ideas to generate, to have any effect, they knew how to buy and sell. So they're totally secure. So no, today, as Ramanujan, it's inconceivable that you write under the very nose of the government, financed by the government, subversive articles about the government. Inconceivable. I did it merrily for 8 years. No problem. It's protected by various sides. Now, that is very important to remember today's context, that you go ahead and sit in the front of the government, mighty people, and you start criticizing them openly and publishing them. But nothing done. Nothing was done to me. Not even a question asked. They could have said you cannot go abroad, your passport, nothing. Absolutely. I was free to do and did everything.